Hi, this is Politics by Jake. I'm Jake, and today I want to make some comments, some hopefully pertinent comments, about the Federal Reserve. I talk about the Federal Reserve in my book entitled Secret Combinations, a primer, and some of the things I will say will be taken from the portion of that book, and I have some other comments to make as well. Now, I've pondered how much to get into the workings of this system with you, but this kind of information is available from many sources on the internet, and as I often say in these videos, it's not the intention of Politics by Jake to go into an exhaustive analysis of things like this, where the basic information is available already from many sources that viewers of this video can, in almost every case, easily access. But because of what the Federal Reserve System is and what it does, it is highly controversial. Fellow travelers who post articles about, quote-unquote, the Fed on the internet will dispute some of the allegations I'm going to make here, so I want you to be aware from the get-go this is a controversial topic, and that this notwithstanding, the observations I am going to make are what I consider to be some really important things that Americans need to understand about the system, and one of them is that it has been in existence since 1913. Now, for just a little history on this, in 1907, there was a financial panic of sorts, which you can look up if you just type in, open quote, the Panic of 1907 into a search engine. Now, as a result of the Panic of 1907, which interestingly occurred, as often these things do, in a good crop year, while industry was doing well and prosperity generally existed in the country, just like in the year that the Depression occurred, which was 1929, although, as an aside, I might observe it really didn't become a depression until 1931, and that is a topic of another video yet to be created. Anyway, in this game of high money stakes was hatched a plan, actually two plans. One was the plan that became the Federal Reserve Act, and the other was known as the Aldrich Act, and it was after the senator who proposed it. His name was Nelson Aldrich. The acts were very similar, however, the two were played against each other for a time in the then existing media, which basically was the newspapers, because radio, although it kind of sort of had been invented by that time, it wasn't available to be used by the public at large. But as I say, it was played up in order to make it appear to the public, who typically would not understand the complexities of either bill, that a viable choice existed, and that the Federal Reserve Act would result in the financial reform that people were so concerned about. And as an aside, I would say, based on the various panics that had occurred, the Panic of 1907 was not the first one. But honestly, this was a figment of the imagination if there ever was one. No choice, in fact, existed. They were, for all intents and purposes, the same proposal. So in other words, this is a secret combination. It's a good example of a secret combination to bring about a desired result that the public was not aware of. Preparing the ground, giving the appearance of openness, spending a few years, encouraging debate so that the public had an opportunity to weigh in, when really it was always a rigged game. The stage was further set by the election of 1912 of Woodrow Wilson. His statements about money reform, and he ran on that type of platform, that is to say money reform, and keeping the money of the citizens in the United States out of the hands of the Wall Street banking elite, have to be considered nothing short of astonishing when you consider that the Federal Reserve Act really did, which is to literally put the money of the people of the United States squarely into the hands of said Wall Street banking elite. The Federal Reserve Act initially created 8 regions of the country, and that's now been expanded. Each region has a Federal Reserve Bank. One reason this was done to give the illusion that New York no longer controlled the money market solely, but this was a mere fabrication. Nothing had changed. No control over the markets was granted to the other regions by this act. It created a board of governors whose terms were originally supposed to span 10 years, but which now span 14, longer than 3 terms of a president. These governors are appointed by the president, but they are not beholden to the government of the United States in any way, in much the same way that the First Bank of the United States was, in fact, a private corporation beholden to the United States only by virtue of the need to renew its charter in 1811. The United States owns no stock in the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, in fact, is not federal at all. It has no linkage to that government. It only preys upon it. It is what is called an eleemosynary trust, and as such is not subject to audit by Congress. There have been strong suspicions for decades that it is connected directly to the largest banking houses in Europe. Those with English or American-sounding names are, in fact, either extremely complicit with or are controlled by European houses as well. Janet Yellen, who at the time of this video is the Secretary of the Treasury, is also the President of the Federal Reserve. The Department of the Treasury is a cabinet position. So you have this really troubling situation where the head of the Federal Reserve System is also the Secretary of the Treasury. Again, this is very troubling. It is also very important to stress again that this is not a department of the government, but is more properly called a system. It is a private system. It is not controlled by the United States government. It is not controlled by the people of the United States, who, as an aside, generally, they don't know that much about the Federal Reserve anyway, if they know anything at all. It is controlled by private groups, such as financiers, bankers, such as the Bank of England, such as the Bank of France, and it is also extremely important to note, as I say these words, that both those entities, that is, the Bank of France and the Bank of England, are also, they themselves, privately controlled. And as another aside, I want to say, imagine, please, if you will, private entities owning the Bank of France, owning the Bank of England. It refuses to allow itself to be audited and has defied at least one virtually unanimous, and when I say unanimous, I think there was maybe one negative vote in the Senate. So in other words, 99-1. Good luck trying to get that many senators to agree to that extent on anything else, I can tell you. Congressional resolution I am aware of demanding that it so submit itself. I realize that what I'm telling you here, and I am telling you this, I mean, this is my story and I'm sticking with it. This may come as quite a shock to people hearing this for the first time. I know it did to me, but to show you the extent of this situation, here's a list of the present and past owners of the Federal Reserve System. And remember, if some of the names are not familiar to you, this list goes back to 1913. So some of these names are interests which were in existence then, may not be in existence now, or who may have changed. First, Warburg and Company, and Warburg and Company had offices in Hamburg, Germany, Amsterdam, Netherlands, Israel, Moses Seif of the Banks of Italy, Kuhnloeb and Company of Germany and New York, Lehman Brothers of New York, the Rothschilds of London, the Rothschilds of Berlin, Lazard Brothers of Paris, Goldman Sachs of New York, Rockefeller Brothers of New York, Chase Manhattan, Brown Brothers Harriman, Laissez-Faire, the Morgan Guarantee Trust, and the Order. Again, notice how many foreign entities there are who are a part of the cabal that privately controls this system, which has complete control over the finances of the people of the United States. Our finances. Now, if you go online and you look at the, well, slanted, in my opinion, descriptions of what the Federal Reserve is, basically what those sources are going to say and what you're going to get out of it is that they're saying to you is it's okay. It's a private organization, but it's a government organization, and it's the private organization that's got control of our money and also, by derogation, control of the money of England and France. But hey, that's okay. But I don't think it's okay. I think this is a scandal. I think it's an abomination. I think it's an obscenity. Also, if you go online, you will read denials of at least some of the names that I have posted here. With the advocates of the Fed, there is this kind of pish-tush, la-di-da attitude about such entirely legitimate questions. This is no doubt designed to put people off or act as a kind of a left-handed conveyance of the attitude which they want to instill in the reader. Oh, these guys are okay. I can move along. I can go about my business. Nothing to see here. I don't think that's okay either. The truth of the matter is that regardless of how the information on the internet portrays it, the fact is that the Federal Reserve System is not the Federal Reserve System of the United States. It's the Federal Reserve of the bankers. It's a private system, and it's a scandal, and it goes back to 1913. Woodrow Wilson, who signed it into law, as well as a bunch of other people, as you're going to see here in just a second. And it's been this way for, upwards now of 100 years. I mean, it's 2023 at the time of this video. 1913, that's over 100 years. It was this organization that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was talking about in veiled terms in 1936. When he talked about the enemies of freedom, he would say this. He would talk to the bankers, and he would tell them what to do, and they hated him, and he welcomed their hatred. And this is true. This is just not campaign stuff. This is true. This is so important, in fact, that I am here providing the link to the actual speech. It is something that I urge my viewers to listen to and consider within themselves. How do we know that it just wasn't a campaign speech? How do we know he was talking about these interests? Because he says so. Here's some relevant citations from the speech. We had to struggle with the old enemies of peace: business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, war profiteering. They had begun to consider the government of the United States as a mere appendage to their own affairs. We know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob. Never before in our history have these forces been so united as they stand today. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred. He was telling the truth. That was the truth then, and it is the truth now. And as an aside, let me say that this is an important thing to understand also, because in this speech, Roosevelt, who was a rich man himself, he was a rich man, and who was considered, because he did these things and because he called these people out, he was considered a traitor to his own class because he did these things. And he affirmatively declared and absolutely identified these interests as enemies, and not just enemies of the then present, and that's 1936. But he qualifies them further. He says the old enemies of peace, or in other words, those entities and interests that are always the enemies of peace in all times and places. The Fed is strong. They're considerably stronger than the Wall Street money power alone. As an aside, they speak through the Washington Post. That is their news organ of choice, by the way. They can make you and they can break you. The situation with Trump in this regard is a good example. Trump has had a special relationship with the New York Fed on Maiden Lane, which is the head of all the Feds. And this has been clear from the 1990s. No one could have gotten as far as Trump did, given the kind of person he is, without the Fed's help, because everybody in New York knows what Trump is. They know he's a clown. They know he's a buffoon. And they could have put an end to Trump in the 1990s and on, but they didn't. And this speaks loudly about their power and about their intentions. They are like people who start the party and they bring in the punch bowl and it's full, And once the party gets going, they take the punch bowl away. This is figuratively speaking, of course, but this is what they do to the world by means of the economy. They control the money. So they stimulate the economy to get it going so that the people can labor, they can build things, material assets of real value, industrial, agrarian, technological process, so on and so forth. And then, once things have been going on for a while, they say, oh, a recession is coming, or, oh, a depression is coming, we must cut back. Ordinary folks must cut back. This, by the way, is called austerity and is what the money power, of which the Fed certainly is a part, inflicts upon the poor and the middle class, thus taking away the proverbial punch bowl of economic fruitfulness. Notice that they themselves do not cut back. No, that is for you, the middle class, to do. And when this happens, which is all a contrivance, by the way, on their part, their idea of recovery is to reap everything. Liquidate farms, liquidate farmers, liquidate real estate, liquidate stocks and bonds, liquidate all private holdings. And then when they've done that, then when they've taken everything that they can take out of the middle class, then there can be a recovery. But what this is a reaping of the middle class, as I say, and it's something that they want to do again and again and again. This is their scheme. This is their plan. So again, they want to reap the middle class, and then when the middle class is impoverished, they don't have anything anymore, they want to start the system of them building their own fortunes again, which they always try to do back up again, so they can reap them again eventually. Again, because of all the depredations and the increasingly unbridled cruelty that we see in the world today, which is to a great extent because of the dramatic economic inequality that is imposed fecklessly and carelessly upon the poor and the middle class and the general immiseration of the populace all over the world that has occurred because of it. This can only be described using words like abomination, like obscenity. Well, that's about all for now. There may be future videos on the Fed, which is a very interesting subject, but that's about it for now. So I'm Jake, this is Politics by Jake, and I will see you in the next videos. Hi everybody, it's Jake with Politics by Jake, and I wanted to thank you for watching the video and ask you that if you like what you see, you like what you're hearing on this, ask you to please subscribe and also support me. And one of the ways that you can do that is by going to the URL that I put right below here on the screen, www.jakelaw.me. Now, I'm a business advisor with 30 years experience in law, business, and real estate, and I have great products and services for people who either own a business, and that's any business, by the way, not just a real estate business, who want to start a business, and once again, that's any business, and or who want to grow wealth, which one of the very best ways to do that remains real estate, and who want their business, their property, and their wealth protected in the absolute positive best way possible, using secrets that only millionaires and billionaires know how to use. So, I hope to see you over there at www.jakelaw.me, where you can sign up for a free 15-minute consultation real soon. And thanks once again for watching my videos.